CSGO maps are fascinating. Map makers are forever pushing the boundaries of what is possible using the ever-outdated Hammer editor. The same level editor that created this is then also capable of making something like this or this. Maps are also being covered in an ever-increasing layer of polish, and that's evident year on year. After all, you just have to look to the Mapcore project to see the absolute best of the best maps that are being put out. It's truly something to behold, and should Source 2 be anywhere in CSGO's future, I can only imagine this will become even more apparent. So let's take a look at some of these maps, and more importantly, their out-of-bounds areas. Map makers put a lot of time into decorating a map, but sometimes it's what's on the outside of the map that really helps tie it all together, or at the very least, add some dank Easter eggs. We'll start our adventure at DE Tuscan, one of the newest maps added to CSGO, after being lovingly remade by Cat Food, a well-known mapper in the community for some of their previously included maps, such as DE Tulip, included in Operation Wildfire, and DE Log, included in Operation Bloodhound. Originally, Tuscan, or CPL Mill as it was known back then, was just a series of corridors and generic boxes, but was later adapted to have more of a deserty type feel to it. But Cat Food took the map and did a whole 180 with it, making it more of a castle town with connections to the sea. Both maps are undoubtedly Tuscan, but both have completely contrasting settings. The map still feels closed off, but does an excellent job of making up for what it lacks in playable space, in vertical detail. You can peer up the cliffs here, and watch the houses scale up the side of the mountain and off into the distance. DE Breach, in comparison, is a map that feels much more open, with the skybox being much further out and displaying much more detail within the actual level. A lot of the playable space that you can see you can actually visit should you no-clip outside of the level. Just look over here, there's a roundabout, houses off in the distance, and even other office blocks. Even just peering through some of the windows yields more detail, such as on the A-bomb site, where peering through this door at the back of the site reveals a lobby area, complete with stairs, lifts, and bright orange chairs. Or over towards A Long, where you can see a dining area and a meeting room, should you choose to jump spot while pressed up against the glass. The aforementioned dining area even continues outside, where the level continues its level of detail and shows off benches, cars, and walkways, all far outside the confines of the level, and all in the name of decoration. And all of this before I even mention all the details towards the T side of the map, and the terrifying weapon-eating stairs. For me, this is what makes good maps stand out from great maps. A map is attention to detail and the ability to make each location on the map feel like a real place. The ability to take what would otherwise be a simple wall and turn it into extra detail outside of the playable space. Take for example one of my maps, DE Reflect. It's not finished, nor am I ever sure it will be, but if we compare what I've created to a map like, say, DE Mirage, you can see that Valve have put much more effort into what's outside of the playable area than I have, and they've updated the maps over the years to add an increasing amount of detail, presumably to complement the viewer experience, with the production quality of tournaments ever increasing. What may have been possible many years ago just isn't up to snuff anymore. No more missing clips or textures in flybys. Again, we can use Mirage as an example. In this old compatibility version of Mirage, we can see, or in this case can't see, various rooftops. They're all made using no draw in an attempt to keep frame rates as high as possible, as these are areas of the map that were never meant to be seen. But now, as time has progressed and as has the tournament production value, we can see that these roofs have all since been filled in. This area over mid, for example, has now become an actual balcony type area. This isn't to say that Valve have always just added decoration for the sake of making the map prettier. Sometimes they even have to get rid of decoration in the name of gameplay. Did you know that Sandwich used to be home to many barrels? Or have you ever noticed the distant scenery getting slowly and slowly trimmed away? Probably not, but that's the point. Where Valve have had to make the maps prettier in some more impactful ways, they've then had decided to optimise the map in other ways. It seems to be a delicate balancing act. Anyway, enough about Mirage. Let's look at a map that's notorious for out-of-boundness, D-Train. I've always found Train's areas fascinating, especially when compared to older versions of it. Before Valve remade it in 2014, it was rather boxy and felt more like an enclosed kill zone. It still had a funky out-of-map exploration that was to be had, but the remake took it one step further. Train is littered with fun to be had. Offices, server rooms, and even an area that looks like it could be a whole other bomb site. You've probably seen it 100 times from Ivy looking at the T-connector, but if you go up these stairs here and peer through the window, you get a wonderful look onto this whole other part of the train yard. Did you know there was a trailer just outside of Upper B? Or have you ever truly stopped to appreciate the detail that went into Connector? Once you start looking at these maps a little closer, it's fascinating to see what you can find. So let's do just that. I'm going to take you through many of the official maps and point out some particularly interesting areas that are out of the playable space. For Inferno, at the back of Coffins, there's actually a cemetery for you to, put your coffins. There's this interesting chained off fence that actually connects all the way around to middle. There is this garden-like area, which has seen a bit more use recently due to the popularity of this wallbang. And perhaps, most infamously, this room, which hosts an Easter egg. every so often if you peer through this doorway, the PC will display an original Counter-Strike 1.1 game menu. Sadly, Vertigo doesn't have much out-of-bounds fun to be had, considering it takes place on a building that's under construction. However, it is worth noting that the out-of-bounds areas pay homage to the map's original layout. Peer through the fence here and you can see what used to be the terrorist spawn, and no clipping through the fence reveals what used to be the T-path to bombsite A. Nuke, like Breach, has lots of space to explore outside of the level's constraints. For example, turn around in CT spawn and look through the fence and you'll see there's a whole bunch of extra garages, warehouses, complete with crates, a forklift, and these weird shiny shotgun shell looking things. Peering through this chain link fence in the garage shows where a secret used to be in older versions of D-Nuke, but now it's all but forgotten. But seems like a missed opportunity for an Easter egg of some description. Even just a sign perhaps. Continuing further into the map and outside, you can see a road with a river passing under it that brings a whole new meaning to the term hard water. Finally, moving inside, and much like Train and Breach, there's a whole bunch of interesting fun stuff in the locked rooms. Like this room at a ramp. There's computers and dials lining the walls with high-tech stuff scattered across the tables, such as these crisps and this bar of chocolate. Or in Hell, where peering through this glass at a specific angle displays the whiteboard which displays, among other things, the quote, "Stop letting chickens into the facility." A gentle poke at the fact that chickens seem to get everywhere in this game, especially in deathmatch mode. In fact, quite a few of these whiteboards on the map display funny messages or drawings, like the ones down on bombsite B, where the quote, "Do not erase" can be found, erased, and two drawings can be found, one of a chicken and one of a cat in the box, with the quote, "Still here, Owen," written next to it, which is a clear reference to Owen Schrodinger's cat. Dust 2 is relatively boring, in terms of out-of-the-map exploration at least, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, it's much better and infinitely less boxy, but it just lacks some of that extra fun that the other maps have. Moreover, it still manages to feel enclosed. There's a few pathways that lead off to doorways and little nooks and crannies, but there's just not much of interest. There's only 3 places I think worth noting. That's this area in T-spawn that connects up to the door in Pit, this funky side road adjacent to Long, and finally this area in Tunnels that I've always thought is quite pretty. Ancient, like Dust 2, is relatively fun-free. There's a few areas outside the playable area, but it's mostly just hills and dirt and foliage. But that fits the map's theme, I suppose. The area behind Alley does show a rather cool top-down view of the map with all of its labelled zones, as it's based in what I believe is an archaeological dig site. Now, I've saved the best for last. For me, personally, I think Overpass is the most interesting map for out-of-bounds exploration. For example, there's this Easter egg in CT spawn, where if you shoot the cash machine enough times, it spits out a bunch of money. Right in front of that is these fun physics props too. Heading towards Long, there's an entire cafe here, complete with an inaccessible outdoor eating area and balcony area, which leaves me wondering how many people have actually noticed it over the years, or if it's just detail that goes underappreciated. Speaking of which, how many of you ever noticed this house at Long? I remember noticing it a few years back thinking it was new, having never actively seen it before, despite running past it hundreds of times. In Connector, there's this sneaky little doorway, or near the T exit, there's this little lawnmower cupboard. In T-spawn, the out-of-bounds area shows exactly how the terrorists got into the map, by climbing over this fence. Of course, everybody knows about the train, but there's also the sewer pipes that look oddly like the ones found in Half-Life 2. There's this evil-feeling red room in the CT route to B, complete with ominous toilet paper. And finally, there's my favourite Easter egg. By pressing up against this door, you can hear a nightclub playing some Portal 2 music. So that concludes my tour around the active duty map pool, exploring all of its out-of-bounds areas. I've purposefully left a few spots out to encourage you to boot up a map and just run around it, and appreciate some of the design and decoration that goes into a map. Not just the playable area, but the area around it. The area that makes a map feel lived in, like a real place, and not just like an endless kill box.